So this is a very long-awaited book, kind of analytic notes about. So the book I'm going to be talking about today is called Invisible Cities by Calvino. This book was really interesting to be able to read. First of all, there's no really exact prompt, as well as barely any characters. Yet somehow this fiction book says more about humanity, memory, and imagination than any nonfiction book I've ever read. It's definitely not laid out like a normal book, and once you start to understand it, this book really hits you with an emotional power. So today I'm going to break down and make sense of what this book actually entails. This whole book is framed over a conversation between an explorer, Marco Polo, and Kublai Khan, which is an emperor for this massive and overwhelming empire. Kublai, who seeks to understand the reach of his crumbling empire, Marco goes into this conversation describing 55 cities. Each of these cities with a poetic and seeming philosophical meaning. Some of these cities have completely impossible designs. Some cities are built on stilts, while some are connecting each citizen by a piece of string. Which this kind of gives me a vibe of like Howl's Moving Castle, which if you haven't seen it, it's like a Studio Ghibli movie of this big castle that's built in the sky that has multiple doors to multiple places in the world. But his idea of these 55 cities is that they are a reflection of the human experience. And Marco's structure of these cities is super intentional. The cities are grouped by themes from the human experience, such as memory, desire, like certain signs and symbols, etc. The order of these isn't random. Calvino builds that mathematical pattern where everything mirrors something else. This making so that every time Marco describes a city, this pushes Khan a little bit closer, Khan is much more of a mathematical person, military mind, a little bit farther away from reality, and a little bit closer to truth rather than his pure human understanding. For Khan, though, it's a moment of self-actualization, kind of reminding us over the times where we have been issued with, let's say at 3 a.m., thinking about all the wrongs we've done in our life, and eventually we end up sobbing and never getting over them. But instead of moping and not understanding the process of which Marco is trying to come by, Khan starts building off Marco's logic. The thematics of this book spark a deep sense of reality, like a way deeper sense of it, which many of these cities feel like memories, which in the process they show how they fade, how they shape us, and how sometimes we rewrite them without meaning to. One of the cities is where everything is built to remember, but the more they try to preserve this memory, the more we forget it. This builds on my idea of humans' limitation of knowledge, kind of making us question our own limitation of knowledge, such as like things that like are rooted in tradition, like religion, Christmas, Thanksgiving, all the things that people before us have created that we never really knew about, and we just assume the idea based on what they have told us. And as well as the issue with romanticizing is a big issue with memory. This plays a huge part in the modern world. You've probably heard the word romanticized or romanticism a lot nowadays. It's a big word, especially in my generation and TikTok and everything, that drill. But understanding how these cities show human desire can show us how human desire can create or ruin someone. Some of these cities are full of longing, which are called dream cities. Others show how chasing desires ultimately can trap you. Calvino offers the saying, "Be careful of what you romanticize." This, to me, shows, is your desire truly worth the chase? Or do you lose more after achieving it? This kind of goes into Marco's explanation of Khan's falling empire by trying to explain that what Khan is seeking, is it truly worth his people? Is it truly worth losing that type of culture? Is building his empire more vast, more expanding outwards? Is it more important than expanding the mind and the culture that's in it? as well as another thing of the thematics is behind all the dreaminess of the cities, this causes a feeling of existential dread. A lot of these cities question whether the things that we know mean how they actually mean. Much like the world we come to today, instead of just how we interpret things, how do they really sound? How are these things truly what we interpret? Which this kind of builds on the modern concept of arguing controversies built off religion. Like we can talk about like abortion, gay marriage, stuff like this. Is this truly the truth, or is it something someone has built off and we are taking that concept and putting it into our beliefs today? Which is kind of the whole purpose of religion. But that concept of questioning whether things we know or we interpret of what they mean, is that actually what they truly mean? This kind of goes into the last cities concept what I mentioned, where everything is built to be remembered from the past, but the more we try to preserve it, the more we forget about it and the more it changes. Marco also teaches Khan that when the world becomes incomprehensible, imagination, instead of becoming an escape, it becomes a tool unnecessarily. These cities grow too fast, people become disconnected, technology overwhelms life, causing less social interaction in person and more social interaction online. We lose more culture in this process instead of growth, which without culture, our growth lacks meaning. The vastness of our empire compared to the culture of our people is way more important than how far we stretch. Say, the United States is built off tons of cultures. We are a very diverse country. But what if we had none of that? What if we had no culture? What if we had nothing? Is the United States truly a correct democracy? Is it truly the home of the free if we don't have all these cultures? I disagree. I feel like if we need more culture in order to protect what we have. A nation is only as good as its people. In conclusion, the summary basically of Invisible Cities is that it's poetically and logically comparing the truth and the human knowledge into a single novel. This description by Marco Polo of the 55 fictional cities represents something abstract, the philosophy of human memory, what we long for, what we fear, how we interpret symbols and signs, how we build a meaningful culture in others' lives. The cities I mentioned often break the rules of physics and logic, existing only in imagination, and are floating or disappear or mirror themselves. Marco's ideas are not just to give political and military reports, which confuses Khan, who's more of a mathematical and military mind. This overwhelms Khan, especially by the size and instability of his empire. He seeks knowledge. Yet over time, listening to Marco telling about these 55 imaginable cities, he realizes that Marco's not describing a literal city. He's describing a metaphorical reflection of human experience. These cities that reveal truths about identity, desire, memory, civilization, building a philosophical dialogue between Marco, suggesting that even when a city seems to decay or collapse, there are invisible reasons holding it alive. These reasons include community of connections, relationships, hopes, things that can't be mapped and measured. Khan recognizes that the imagination is not a distraction but a tool, giving him a new way to understand his empire, his people, and their culture. The book ends with the idea that searching for meaning within cities requires logic, especially when you're trying to form a civilization, but as well as culture. That is what makes survival possible even in difficult times. So that's my analytical perspective on the Invisible Cities by Calvino. Thanks for watching. Hopefully next time I have to do this, I won't wait till last minute to pick a book, and maybe I'll get the Hunger Games next time. Hopefully.